Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Kris. Sorry, just in the microphone. This is part 2 of JFK assassin final interview before his death. At the end of the first video, I said there was a guy, his name is Michael Francesi. Not Michael Man, not Francesi, Francesa. There you go, the sports guy, not him. This is he's a mobster, he's a former mob guy. But he said JFK was a mob hit. The JFK assassination was a mob hit. Let me say that better. All right, before we get started, thumbs up, subscribe, both free options, please. Second is a paid option. Click on the thanks, donate to the channel. Request a video if you'd like to. Your name sponsors that video. You can still do it without. You can request videos without donating. This was a request video. It just takes a little bit more time. Okay, let's get into part 2.
I had met Johnny Roselli before. I'd met him in Florida, Miami.
Any jobs with him?
Never any jobs with him. I'd talk with him and around, but we never, we was probably involved in some of the same operations or things, but with the same people, but we never went out and did anything together.
Were you aware that Roselli was working with the government again in anti-Castro?
Yes, I was well aware that Johnny Roselli was involved in the government actions. He was like the license between CIA and organized crime, and he was heavily involved in the invasion of Cuba, Bay of Pigs, Chianos Bay, whichever you prefer to call it. But he was also very tight with Frank Sturgis. Frank Sturgis headed up the SAO, which is the secret army organization, what this is all about. And they've had so many different code names for wanting to kill Castro, I couldn't even name half of them. But every time you turned around, somebody had a new operation going.
So tell us about the trip over to Fort Worth.
The trip over to Fort Worth, Johnny Roselli went there to meet somebody by the name of Jack Ruby. I had never knew Jack Ruby, nothing about him. When I got there and pulled into the parking lot, Johnny Roselli told me, he said, let me go in first, see where I'm going to sit, come in, position yourself. And he asked me, he said, are you carrying? And I said, yeah, I'm carrying. He says, good. He says, when I sit down where I'm sitting at, he said, I don't know what may transpire. He said, something could go wrong. He said, but be very alert. He said, keep my backside covered. He said, I won't be in your line of fire. And I said, okay, I pick up open field of fire. I says, wherever I figure I can handle it. I said, I'll go sit down, I'll come in position myself. Johnny Roselli went in and they had like, you could call it a booth at the table sitting there, you know, it wasn't bolted to the floor or nothing. But he sat down in that, and I went in shortly right behind him. I positioned myself at the counter, ordered a cup of coffee, was served, and sit there. And then I sit there and I watched until short stocky built man come in, walked over, Johnny got up, they shook hands, they sit down, they talked for a couple of minutes. I seen him take like a half size, like a legal envelope, but only half that size, out of his jacket, and he pushed it across the table to Johnny Roselli. He got up, they shook hands, this man left, Johnny waited maybe 2 minutes, Johnny looked at me, I got up, I walked out of the restaurant, made sure the area's clear, nobody outside in the parking lot. I went over, got in the car, started up, I pulled up by the door, Johnny Roselli walked out, got in the car, and we drove away.
Did you ask him, or did you find out in some way what was in the envelope?
On the way back to Dallas, Johnny and me was riding down the road. He didn't open the envelope right away. We got almost, I think it's Arlington, it's about halfway there. I'm saying halfway, it could be less one way or the other. Been a long time for me. But we was right about Arlington. And Johnny opened the envelope up, started taking stuff out and looking at it. Excuse me. He's looking at it, I'm noticing over, I'm watching over while I'm driving. And he's got these little black wallets, like half-sided, like identification wallets. And he opened them up and there's identification plates in them and there's badges in them. At that point, I didn't know what the identification on it was because he's sitting there looking at it, and I'm not going to lead over. I'm not going to say, give me one of those or anything like that. I'll wait when they want me to know, he'll tell me.
Didn't that other video that I did, there's a few of you who probably watched it, that CIA agent, this one, didn't he talk about badges were made? I'm just saying, One guy says there were badges made that had like Secret Service or something like that on them. And he's just saying badges were made. Now, he's not saying Secret Service, but badges being made, that's interesting. That's all I'm saying. This guy's in jail. And the other guy died, what, in the 90s, was it? Early 2000s? This guy's story is just come out not too long ago. So I'm just saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's something there with badges. Lends a little bit of credibility to me, especially when you cross it with another story. Could just be me. I don't know if there's something on my screen, but it looked like I had something in my eye. All right, never mind. Sorry.
And then he opened up a piece of paper and he unfolded it. And there's been a lot of discrepancy over this part now. But Johnny Roselli said they only made one change in the route. And it was a map of Dealey Plaza, the motorcade route. When he looked at it for Dealey Plaza, he said they've only made one alter, one change in it. He said, that's all. And I said, what's that? And he said, they're going to go down Elm Street. But I already had reconned the area, so I knew what he was talking about. And I know everybody says, well, they had the motorcade in the newspaper weeks and months ahead of time. True, they did, but they didn't have that one change.
How did Roselli get to Dallas?
At that point, Roselli, he mentioned to me, Johnny Roselli, we was on the way to Fort Worth. And I asked him, when did you get in? He said, I got in this morning. He said, I got in early this morning. He said, I hadn't been here a couple hours. And I said, how'd you get in? And he said he got lucky. He caught a ride on a plane that's sponsored by the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA. I said, how the hell did you manage that one? He said, I got lucky. He's had somebody there. I didn't ask no more. He didn't elaborate any more than that. I didn't dig any deeper than that. I still don't know that he's there on an abort mission. I have no knowledge of that at this point of the game. Johnny Roselli got out of the car, went back in the hotel. I waited maybe 5 to 7 minutes for Charles Nicoletti to come down. When he got down, Mr. Nicoletti got in the car with me and said, let's go. We took off. I said, where to? He said, take me over by the plaza. We went over, we parked, it's drizzling rain, we get out, we're walking around. This is the first time that Charles Nicoletti has even mentioned to me about an abort team. While we're walking around, Charles Nicoletti asked me, he says, how do you feel about being backup? I said, what do you mean backup? He says, how would you feel about being backup as a shooter for me? I said, what happened to Johnny? What's with Johnny? And he said, Johnny's a little bit paranoid on this. He says, the CIA's called the hit off. He said, well, he doesn't want to go against the orders of the CIA. He said, what he wants to call off. He said, he flew in here as an abort team. He said, they flew a plane here specially with him on it to tell us to call it off. He said, they don't want the hit to go down. And I said, well, what'd you say? Chuck's exact words were, it's going anyway. And I told him, I said, well, what about Johnny? He said, well, Johnny's good. Johnny will be with me, he says, but he's not going to be a shooter. He said, he doesn't want to go against the orders. He said, he's been told he flew in here specifically to abort this assassination. And so I asked him at that point, I said, what'd you say? I said, it's a go. He said, we're going to do it. He said, Jimmy, he says, you know we can't call this off. Only one man can stop it. And he was referring to Sam Giancana. He was the number 2 man at that time. A lot of people's going to tell you he was number 1, but not true. Tony Accardo was still running things. He turned things over. He had Sam Giancana running all this operation and everything, but Tony Accardo was still the man, and he was still calling the shots on whatever went down, whatever was done. I knew of no other crime family being involved. I heard rumors, but do I know if anybody else was involved? No, I do not know if anybody else was involved.
Okay.
They would have been out of character for them to even notify me about that or anybody else. That only stays up in the higher ranks of the family or the people or the crime family, however you wish to describe it. About 10:30 a.m., Mr. Nicoletti told me he asked me to be the backup shooter. And that was the first inkling of anything that I would ever be involved in the assassination itself. Prior to that, I was only know the area and transport weapons. It started clearing about 10:45, I believe, the best I can remember. I could be off a few minutes. I know it'd been drizzling rain, it was cold, it was damp. Sun didn't come out until, after 11 a.m., I believe. And I told Johnny, I said, yes, I'd be honored. I told Mr. Nicoletti, I said, I would be honored to back you on it. I said, anything you ask, I'll do. And he asked me where
I would be honored to back you on that. Hey, do you want to shoot the president? I would be honored to back you up on this. Like, wow. Jeez.
thought it would be the best place for him. And I told him the Dow Tech building, because the Dow Tech building gave him a better shot with him taking the straight run through at a high rate of speed. And evidently, I'm quite certain that they had all this prearranged on that part of it, as that place is his location, and for him and Johnny as far as that goes, because they already had made an arrangements to be admitted into the building. Oh, he didn't check it, he just asked my opinion. He has always questioned me about different things. He used me like a sounding board. Like maybe, you're in business, you're in the office, you might ask one of your people around you, what do you think about this? You don't really care what he thinks, you're just asking for an opinion to see what he thinks. Maybe you overlook something, or maybe somebody's got a better idea than you do at this time of the game. He respected me for my knowledge of weapons, my knowledge of knowing terrain, because I'd been in combat, and the first thing you walk into an area is, to you it's a landscape, to me it's terrain. Because if I walk in and I walk into an ambush, I want to know where the low spots are, the high spots are, where all the coverage is. I got to know where I can get my rear end down so I don't get shot off. You got to have a place to go to ground in a hurry. You cannot afford to stand around and be looking around and wondering, gee, where can I go from here? You do, you're dead. You got to think. That's why you take all this training in the military. You're trained not to think, but to react.
That's a really good point.
Mr. Nicoletti asked me, he said, if you back me up, Jimmy, he says, where do you think it'd be the best spot for you? And I said, well, the spot I like best is up on the grassy knoll behind that stockade fence. He says, why there? I said, I got the railroad yard for cover. I said, my clothes, I can turn my jacket inside out. I said, it's plaid on the inside. It looks like railroad workers. Somebody out there wearing a flannel shirt. Nobody's going to pay no attention to me. I said, I can go over there. I can walk around a piece of chalk, walk up and down by box cars, cross the railroad tracks, look at things. I'd just be another worker. Nobody'd even look at me. And he said, okay. He says, what weapon are you going to use over there? And I told him, and Chuck, I said, well, what's the situation? Chuck said, we're going for a headshot now. I said, this I understand. I realize this. He said, you're not going to fire unless it becomes a necessity. He says, if I miss, he said, then it's going to be up to you. He said, but you don't fire, he said, unless I miss. He said, it's going to be your call at that point. He said, so you got to be very alert on this. And I told him, don't worry about me. I said, I got it, boss.
I was actually asked to participate in this, and I had said that I would go in the grassy knoll. They asked me what weapon I wanted, and I said, flamethrower. I was immediately fired. So, yeah, apparently a flamethrower will not reach the presidential car. So my second option was a grenade. And yeah, I got fired immediately. I guess a gun would have been the proper choice, yeah. That's my fault. That's my bad.
And he said, what are you going to use? I said, I'm going to use the fireball. And he looked at me and says, why? Why the fireball? Now the fireball, for people who don't know what a fireball is, it's like a cut-down rifle. It's actually basically this long. The weapon was well ahead of its time. This was one of the prototypes the agency had got a hold of that had been manufactured by Remington. Now a lot of people are going to tell you that this particular weapon was not available at that time, but this weapon was available. It didn't go on sale until a few years later. But this weapon had been manufactured as early as 1961. We had a lot of trouble, the barrel blowing up on it, used too big a round on it or something, overloads in it. A lot of problems with it, but they finally reinforced the barrel. We got it where it worked pretty good. And Chuck asked me, he says, why the fireball? He says, you've only got one shot, because the Remington Fireball 222 is a single shot bolt action pistol. You can mount a scope on it. So, well, if I'm gonna wait until you're through, I said, I'm only gonna get one shot anyway, so it don't really matter. I said, because I'll never get a chance for a second shot if I wait until the last possible moment. He said, okay. He said, it's your call.
Where'd you get hold of a prototype weapon like the XP-100?
It was given to me by David Phillips. I'd received this maybe a year prior, 8 months, year prior to the assassination. The gun had been used twice before on assassinations, but nobody like a president or nothing. But it was good for using. If you want to get into a close place area or somewhere, somebody might say, well, why use a pistol? Well, anybody that knows their weapons, this particular piece of sub is very accurate. Very accurate. Up to
Who were the two people? Not a president, so like a politician and a mailman. Those are my two guesses. I'm pretty positive it's definitely the mailman.
100 yards. At 100 feet, I'm talking about we're shooting now from the grassy knoll down to the highway to the street there. We're talking roughly 30, 35 yards. We're only talking 100 feet. This is like shooting fish in a barrel, and especially a little 3-power scope on it. But the weapon had been used before, but you could put it in a briefcase. You could walk anywhere with it. Nobody pay any attention to it. The case that I had set up, I had a little loading press inside for it in case I had to manufacture anything. I had a little holder for all the special rounds that were in it. Everything was packed in foam rubber inside. The case was watertight, waterproof.
What'd the case look like?
The case was black. It was like an oversized briefcase, basically speaking. And handle on a little metal flaps on it, you know, for locking it up. You could lock the case, but I wasn't concerned about locking it. But the thing is, you could take it, you could go anywhere you look like a businessman with it. And I felt that was the best weapon to go with. And so Mr. Nicoletti agreed with me on it. He said, okay, it's your call, Jimmy. Now then, I did not drop Charles Nicoletti or Johnny Roselli off at the Dowtech building. They got into the building, they were there on their own. I told them where the car would be, it's his car, he knows his car. He knows what my job is. They'll be in the car, he'll be in the front seat, Johnny will be in the back seat, I'll get under the driver's wheel. I'll set my briefcase between the front and the back seat, we'll drive away. After I took Charles Nicoletti back to the hotel, I went back to the plaza, secured the car, got my briefcase out with a gun in it, with a fireball in it. I went into the railroad yard. I secured that over there, put it away so nobody see it. Reversed my jacket inside out. I'd taken my hat, great floor like, and my jacket was a gray poplin. We had these car jackets back then. They were like waist length, not a short jacket, but they kind of come down a little bit. There's no car jacket like, made out of a material that they no longer use. It was called poplin. You might remember that material. The poplin material, grayish color, had a shine to it. Excuse me, that's what the jacket was like that I was wearing, a pair of gray pants with it.
Sorry, I was looking up poplin jackets. I did not learn anything. They look like jackets today, so I'm pretty sure I got it wrong, what I was looking up.
And I reversed the jacket and it had the offset plaids in it, like, you know, kind of like checkered on the inside. When I turned it over, it looked like.
I wonder if it's this type. Little plaid on the inside. John Blair poplin jacket. Anyway, so now we kind of had an idea of what it looks like.
One of the old gray flannel shirts that we used to wear out, you know, when you was doing work in the yard or something or other. Excuse me. And I walked around the railroad yard and I was waiting for the time to pass. Time was coming on. And when I heard the roar of the crowd, I'd been over by the fence and I got there a few minutes early. And I'd look up and I'd look over the fence and I would, looking for people. What I was looking for was not to see who I knew, but I was looking for people that would be carrying a bulge like up under their arm. I'm looking for somebody with a weapon. I'm looking for security people, cops, undercover, security, off-duty, whoever might be carrying a weapon. Bulge along their hip, behind their back, like I say, under the arm in a shoulder holster. I'm looking for these little bulges. Most people don't pay no attention to that, but this is what I'm looking for. But then my amazement, I recognized several people. A lot of people say Jack Ruby was never there, but he was there before the motorcade got there. I know that for a fact. But I was that close. I'm looking at the back side of him, and I'm pretty sure that was him. And I stayed away from the fence. I stayed basically in the yard, walk over the fence, look over it, stood a minute, then walked back away again. But I was observing the area.
Were you smoking cigarettes that morning?
I was smoking that day. Careless. I probably stepped on several cigarette butts and left them there. Most of them Pall Mall. It was very muddy. Let me put it this way. I a couple of times even took my shoes, put them up on the little concrete ledge there and scraped the mud off the bottom of them.
The gunmetal gray limousine, blue and gray. The President and Mrs. Kennedy seated on the back seat. Governor and Mrs. Connolly on the second seats or jump seats. And then the official driver and Secret Service men are in the front seat. It will go Mockingbird Lane to Lemon Avenue, then travel south on Lemon to Turtle Creek, Cedar Springs, through the downtown area on Harwood to Maine, west on Maine to Houston, through the Triple Underpass to Stemmons Freeway, then on to the Trade Mart.
The President's car is now turning onto Elm Street, and it will be only a matter of minutes before he arrives at the Trade Mart. It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route. There's numerous people running up the hill alongside Elm Street. Stand by just a moment, please. Put me on, Phil. Put me on. The motorcade is coming by here. The presidential car coming up now. We know it's the presidential car. You can see Mrs. Kennedy's pink suit. There's a Secret Service man, spread eagle, over the top of the car. We understand Governor and Mrs. Connolly are in the car with President and Mrs. Kennedy. We can't see who has been hit, if anybody's been hit, but apparently something is wrong here. Something is terribly wrong. I'm in behind the motorcade, trying to follow them. It looks as though they're going to Parkland Hospital. And just now we've received reports here at Parkland that Governor Connolly was shot in the upper left chest, and the first unconfirmed reports say the president was hit in the head. That's an unconfirmed report that the president was hit in the head. A priest has been ordered. Emergency supplies of blood also being rushed to the hospital.
I was where you got the concrete steps that go down by the pergola there, and between the pergola and the stockade fence, you got a set of concrete steps that go down. I was to the right of those. I must say 8 to 10 feet down there. There was a tree branch that hung right over me. I was behind that, kind of gave me a little camouflage. This was just a few minutes before the motorcade got there. Something happens and I have to shoot. You know, I don't want to have to shoot anybody else unless it becomes a necessity. So I walk away from the fence. I come back over, secured everything, got it ready. I could hear the rumble, the people murmuring, so you know the motorcade's approaching. So then I got ready, opened it up. I'm holding the Remington fireball down below the fence at this point. Motorcade come down, I believe that's Main Street there, come down on Houston, turn back around on the Elm there, come down that little side drive there. Oh, when it come down and made its first right, that's when I brought the weapon up. And then I'm over the fence, and as they come down, made the turn on down there, that's when I started focusing through the scope and following the car. As shots started ringing out, I started counting the shots, but I'm not counting like 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm counting them miss, 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 because I know we're going for the headshot. So I don't care how many rounds are being fired as long as we get a headshot. But I'm hearing the shots being fired, and I'm counting them as a miss, miss. And that's the only thing I'm concerned about. I've got this sign there for the Stemmons Freeway that is fixing to come into my field of fire. As far as I can see at this point, the President has not been hit in the head at this time. I've seen the body lurch. I know he's been hit. How serious, I don't know. But my last instructions was we're going for a headshot. If you have to take a shot, take it. But don't fire unless it's a necessity, unless you really have to. He said, Jimmy, don't fire unless you have to. We want everything from the backside. I'm not asking why. Okay, whatever you say. At this point, as it starts to approach and come behind that freeway sign, and I've already been instructed not to hit anybody but Kennedy because they didn't want Jackie getting hurt or anybody else, I'm fixing to lose my field of fire. And at this point, either I shoot or I can put it in a suitcase and leave, one or the other. I took the shot. I fired one shot only. Well, I was aiming for his right eye, which to me is the left side of his head looking head on. But for him, it would be his right eye. And once I pull the trigger, I'm right in on it, and it's almost like looking 6 feet away through the scope. As I squeezed, take off my round, His head moved forward. I missed, and I coming right along the temple, just right behind the eye. No. All right. Well, I'm not sure because I can't see the penetration. I know I hit him right here. I know I hit behind the eye, somewhere within a half-inch diameter right there, say. What I believe is this, and I got my ratings as marksman. I'm a good shooter, always was. And I'm not bragging on myself, don't get me wrong, but that's what got me my start with David Phillips because of something that I did in the service, and I made a mark there, and it's on record and it's recorded for headshots for what I did and the things that I did. But anyway, to make a long story short, as I was preparing to squeeze off my round, Kennedy's head moved forward just as I squeezed. It was already in process, the head started forward. To me, what I believe is, and I did not see, let me clear the fact now, I never saw Mr. Nicoletti shoot Kennedy, but I know he was the man in the Dowtech building, the man supposed to be doing the shooting. Therefore, the head started forward. As far as I'm concerned, Mr. Nicoletti hit him at that point. As I squeezed off my round, the head started forward, I hit it and blew the head backwards. I didn't hit the rear, the exit blew out. Partially, most of it on his right side, I guess, back there where the section come right out, part of the back of the skull.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that they didn't show it. I've seen the assassination of Kennedy so many times, and I just, the more I see it, the less I'm interested in seeing it. I've seen the inside of his head way too much. We all have. Okay. Well, this is the end of part 2. It's just my dog snoring. It's fine. Okay. Well, are you believing him? It's interesting. I can't say he's lying because I think there's some truth to it. He got me with those badges, though. He got me with the badges. All right. What time is it? 4:50. Yeah, I think I might finish this. Yeah, I'm going to do that. You don't tell me what to do. I tell myself what to do. All right, so I'm going to end this here. Be back with part 3. But until then, have a good day, have a good night.